I'm speaking now to Lucy Brown, who joins us on the lines. She's a former assistant to Tommy Robinson until about 3 months ago. And some of the revelations that Lucy has mentioned since leaving Tommy Robinson's movement have been fascinating. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to speak to Lucy. Lucy, welcome to my show.
Hi, Majid.
Hello. So how long were you with Tommy's movement?
I started working with him in Rebel Media around June 2017.
Okay.
And then he split off with them earlier this year, and I came along with him to come and work independently.
So that was then directly with Tommy. And what was your role with him? Were you his assistant? Were you his aide? How would you describe your role with him?
It was kind of like a bit of everything. Camerawoman / producer / driver / editor. You know, it was kind of a bit of a band of brothers. You know, we all just did what we did.
Yeah. And would you describe yourself as having been part of his inner circle?
Yeah, for sure.
And was this a paid position?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. What did you learn while you were working with Tommy Robinson, and why did you end up leaving that movement?
Well, I was rather unceremoniously fired for reasons that are going to be made clearer at some point in the future. But basically, we just had an argument over something to do with freedom of speech. I'll kind of leave it at that. But yeah, I kind of joined him and everything that was going on because I care very much about the issues, and I think that a lot of what he says is correct. You know, like him or not, there are serious issues which need addressing in this country, and I no longer trust our politicians to be able to deal with them. And the same goes for the media. I think the media are a bit biased, and I couldn't stand up for it anymore. And I saw what he was doing, and I was interested in it, and I thought that I could maybe be of some help. Yeah.
And you said he used to be kind of fun, but then what happened next?
Yeah, it did used to be fun. We used to get on very well, but I just think we had, there were personality clashes. It's, you know, kind of in the middle of politics and the celebrity world in a way, because, you know, the work that you're doing, it generates a lot of views. People kind of want to know what the next chapter of the story is. You've also got the big bad mainstream media coming in and lying about everything, and so people like to attack them a lot. And yeah, it's just kind of very jumped up. And I've now, since leaving, since not being a part of it anymore and taking a step back and looking in, I can now see where that movement is going wrong. And I think, I'm going to call BS on some of it. I said I left Black Lives Matter for the same reason, and I called BS on that. And I think we need to stand up for the truth. And, the truth is that some things are being twisted and over-exaggerated, and it's not going to help solve the situation. We need to, we need to unite people. We need to speak to people on the left, as much as we may disagree with them. We need to be open to speaking to them and speaking to the mainstream media. And I don't think it helps to kind of retreat into an echo chamber and just sort of, get yourself rolled up over what might not necessarily be 100% true, or something that might have a bit of a more difficult explanation. When
you're saying exaggerations and things going wrong, could you elaborate a bit? What's being exaggerated and what's going wrong?
Well, for instance, we do have a massive problem with grooming gangs. That's true. We have a huge problem with grooming gangs, but it's not as if every Muslim in this country is going home and saying, "Oh, isn't it lovely that we can, that we can do all of this and get away with it?" And "Oh, don't you just love, keeping young English girls like this? Isn't this just, what we're here to do?" That's not true. Yeah. You'd be hard pressed to find as well people on the left who are, completely coming out in support of these gangs, but because they disagree with other points that you're making, or they might want to, call people racist down the line or whatever, that doesn't mean that they're pro-rape. So kind of jumping against, people just because they don't agree with one point doesn't mean that they're suddenly pro-rape. It's ridiculous, and it's just kind of people just shouting at each other.
Lucy, I described on my show yesterday that this is similar to the process of radicalisation that I see going on here. I see that where legitimate grievances may, rightly so, they're pointing at legitimate grievances that people aren't speaking about enough, as you've just said as well. But is that turning into something where legitimate anger is brewing to a point where it becomes about the anger?
Yes, and I just saw the Free Tommy protests. I saw there was a small element that turned violent, and they were attacking police. that a couple of times people attack police horses. And you've got these people now going out into the streets to kind of let off steam, and they're coming into contact with far left groups, and they're fighting each other, and, people are getting arrested, they end up with criminal records, and, they don't necessarily have to be out on the streets and doing such things to address these issues. There's a lot that people can do just by, even just sitting at home and engaging with YouTube videos that people are making. You can just expand your mind without having to actually go out and get into fisticuffs. I just think it's too extreme. I don't like how much violence we're seeing these days. It's increased dramatically even over the past just 2 years.
So do you worry about the direction this is all headed? Do you think that the direction Tommy and his supporters are moving towards is going to make things worse when you refer to this violence and the tensions and the division?
Well, yes. I mean, I've kind of gone through it myself, having been sort of spat out of the movement. I mean, ever since, May earlier this year, it's been non-stop. Every day or so, I'm being called names. I'm having, things are said about me online, which I can't, I'm finding it hard to know how to deal with them, but it's getting to the point
by Tommy's supporters?
Yeah, and it got to the point where my number was released on one of these, Facebook pages, and I was having anonymous phone calls. I'm having people say, "We know how to find you. I think you should have an acid facial."
And these are people that are supposedly concerned about young white girls being groomed and raped, and they're speaking to you in this way.
Yes, and it's to the point now where I can't really keep quiet about it anymore, because I'm actually in fear now as a result of, standing up and saying I don't necessarily agree with this, or, I'm going to go my own way. I'm now, sort of living in a kind of situation where I'm sort of scared for my safety.
I'm sorry to hear that, Lucy. Speak to me about Robert Shillman. Who's Robert Shillman?
I'm not sure. From what I gather, I just think he's a donor that perhaps works with the rebel media. I'm not really too sure about it myself. I just know that his name was above Tommy's name when it came up on, when he was doing the report. I think probably the likelihood is he's just a rich, billionaire that wants to fund the movement, which...
Is it true that Tommy's getting £8,000 a month from him?
I couldn't tell you at this point because I've been out of it for so long, but at the moment I think it's mainly a donations-based system.
And do you take the view that a lot of this has turned into a money-making machine?
Yes, well, it's almost like an entertainment industry, really, and it's constantly, begging for money for somewhat trivial things sometimes. And I think, here you are saying that you're a defender of the working class, and yet you're constantly asking the working class to put their hands in their pockets. And for what? They don't always see the results. Sometimes the campaigns that are run, they're not successful. And where does that money then go? I mean, I'm not happy about it. I think working class people have it bad enough as it is without having to spend their hard-earned money on, God knows what.
And you mentioned something about panto journalism, and for effect. Speak to us about that process. How does that end up with money coming towards Tommy and what he wants to do with it?
Well, look, I mean, the fact is, you do have far-left groups like Antifa who, their business is that they want to sort of destroy the opposition through violence. That is how they go about things. They call people fascists that aren't fascists. They call people racist that aren't necessarily racist. And, even if people are racist, I don't think that means that you should be able to attack them physically. I think there's that kind of argument there too. But yeah, people at the moment, because back in 2016, obviously, when Trump was elected and there was Brexit and everything just seemed a bit more crazy, there was this kind of trend for YouTube videos where people would go out and get attacked and then say, oh my God, look, you can't report on this because otherwise you're attacked. There's a kind of a, it's a bit victimy. I've done it as well. Like, I'll hold my hands up and say that I've also done the whole, like, oh my God, I've been attacked thing. And yes, you have been attacked, but on the other hand, we need to be aware that there are now militant groups, and maybe it's best to stay away from them. It's kind of going and trying to cause trouble, and then complaining about it afterwards. And it's just putting yourself in the firing line and showing yourself as the victim, as opposed to explaining why these groups exist. It's as a journalist, you're supposed to be kind of out of the picture.
And you're saying when people load those sorts of videos up, that's where they get the clicks from and the money starts coming in.
Oh, yeah, it's shocking, isn't it? So you say, oh, my God, this has just happened. Isn't it crazy? Click here to help me fight my cause, something like that.
Yeah.
You know.
Lucy, what last question for you? We're up against the deadline, but what do you think somebody like you and others who are listening who may start having doubts about following this kind of phenomenon, what's the way forward? What's the future? Because you mentioned the far left, you've mentioned now with the populist right. What is the better way forward?
Well, listen, there are lots of people who are messaging me saying thank you and saying we've started, you know, we're not going to the marches anymore and we're not so sure about this. And those are the people that you might not hear about because they're not very loud about it. But lots of people are slowly looking and saying, not too sure about this. I think it's not for me. And these people are like me. We're still going to continue and we still want to address the problems. We still want to talk about them, but we just don't see this as the path to take.
Yeah.
But there are plenty of people. So just, you know, have a browse around, see what's going on. You don't have to just worship one person to talk about issues which affect this country and Europe and America, every the Western, you know, kind of world.
Lucy, we have to move on, but I want you to stay safe. I salute your courage in speaking out like this. You are a former aide and assistant to Tommy Robinson. Please do leave your details with my producer. I'd like to stay in touch with you and continue the conversation. Thank you. That's Lucy Brown, a former aide to Tommy Robinson until 3 months ago, speaking about the inside there. We've got to move.
First things first, please do not harass this woman. Do not harass Lucy on Twitter or anywhere else. I do not support that. What I do think we should do is to completely ignore her. Have nothing more to do with this woman. She is not part of the movement anymore. For her to go on mainstream media with Majid Nawaz, the guy who hates Tommy with a passion, and spill the beans with him, the guy who hates Tommy. You don't do that. This is the last thing you do. This is something where you've cut your ties. This is something where you have lost all your trust. You can't trust this woman anymore. She cannot be part of the movement. This is completely a red line. You don't do this. The only reason Majid has allowed Lucy on his show is to use her as a weapon against Tommy. He does not care about Lucy or her feelings. He has no sympathy or empathy. He is a narcissistic psychopath. This is simply a way to try and damage Tommy and his reputation. Something else I want to quickly address is when he claims that this endeavour is simply a money-making machine. Well, this is quite ironic, as Majid, just a few weeks ago, released a video begging for shekels, little poxy £10 donations off of his cooked white male followers. And this was just a week after winning the lottery, after winning £2.5 million off the SPLC. That's how much of a dirty, greedy, money-grabbing little slime ball this man is. But he has the nerve to accuse Tommy of wanting more money. You scumbag. So, anyway, I will leave it there, but once again, I will say that this woman does not seem like someone who can be trusted. Like, dislike, subscribe, unsubscribe. Please comment. Ilu Sassoon. Peace out.